South Africa goes to the polls on the 29th of May. I will track the election and bring you ground reports. Is it the end of the road for the African National Congress? And will former President Jacob Zuma stage a dramatic comeback? From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on First Post. Hello and welcome to First Post Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. In a significant reshuffle to Russia's military command since the war in Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin removes longtime ally Sergei Shoigu as the defense minister. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the country's war to secure its existence is not over yet. This as fighting resumes in North Gaza, with Rafah in the south still on edge. The Swedish Prime Minister says the country is open to allowing nuclear weapons on the country's soil during wartime. This comes as critics call for the new NATO member to ban their deployment of nuclear weapons. Internet access around several East African countries disrupted temporarily due to damaged undersea cables. Tanzania among the worst hit countries, Mozambique, Burundi and Uganda among those affected. And the International Monetary Fund warns the Maldives against the looming debt distress as the strategic archipelago state looks set to borrow more from its main creditor, China. We will bring you all the election updates. Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story. South Africa is at a pivotal point as it gets ready to vote in general elections in 15 days. Multiple polls have predicted a dwindling support for the African National Congress, with the MK party making some gains and even threatening to take voters from other opposition parties. Analysts say Jacob Zuma could be in a position to be kingmaker. The main opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, is hoping for the fall of the ANC. It has been telling the citizens that a new government is within their reach and that this election, their vote will rescue South Africa. Over the weekend, the Democratic Alliance held its biggest rally in 30 years in Durban to wrest the KwaZulu Natal province from the African National Congress. In fact, Firstpost attended the Democratic Alliance's rescue rally that was attended by 10,000 supporters. Take a look at my report. We are coming to you from Curry's Mountain in KwaZulu Natal from the Democratic Alliance rescue rally. The DA is the official opposition in South Africa, and this is a closing rally in the run-up to the elections that will be held on the 29th of May. The excitement is palpable at this historic rally, with an expected turnout of 10,000 supporters, the largest in KwaZulu Natal. As leaders and public representatives unite, they aim to inspire a vision for a prosperous future, with Chris Puppets at the helm as the next premier. We will bring you all the election updates on this pivotal moment in South Africa's political future. Thousands of Democratic Alliance supporters flocked the historic rally that was held at the Curry's Fountain Stadium in Durban. Now, during the rally, the Democratic Alliance leaders delivered their action plan for citizens, including a fight against corruption and the creation of millions of jobs.
In this election, we have two choices. The one choice is the Doomsday Coalition led by the ANC, the EFF and the MK that will take South Africa towards more decline. The other option, which is about hope and restoring South Africa's place towards prosperity, is a coalition led by the DA in the multi-party charter. We've got a solid plan to rescue South Africa. We've got a solid plan to rescue our economy from decline, and we've got a solid plan to make sure that every South African can have a stake in their future. Our core offer going into this election is premised around the concept of rescuing South Africa, right? Given the levels of unemployment in our country, one of our core offers is lifting 6 million people out of poverty. And we aim to do that by creating 2 million jobs. Whether you are a premier, whether you are a mayor, you are the president of the country, if your executive behaves unethically, there must be consequences. People must be fired for getting involved in corruption.
The iconic stadium just outside the Durban city centre has played host to many historic events over the past century, from union gatherings to political rallies to cultural events. The party's federal leader, John Steenhuisen, was also in attendance.
Because we are on the verge of history. We are on the verge of history because the prospects of the DA being in government for the first time in this province are high. This is the culmination of the DA's rally and campaigning here in KwaZulu Natal. We've got an amazing candidate in Chris Papas, and we've got an amazing offer that has 7 key pillars about rescuing KZN. So as you will see, the crowds are starting to trickling in, and we believe right now that the DA is in the strongest possible position to form part of government here in KwaZulu Natal after the 29th of May.
Despite the KwaZulu Natal province being an ANC stronghold, the Democratic Alliance has not thrown in the towel in the political battle. It says the show of support at the rally is a sign that the party is breaking new ground.
I think the biggest significance is the turnout and the demographics of the people that have attended this. And it just shows that people need hope, they need change, and the only way they're going to achieve that is through a political change. And I think that's really exciting today, to see so many people coming out here. And very often we're referred to as a white party, as a racist party. Well, this certainly puts our critics to sleep on what we've experienced today. Clearly there's going to be no outright winner in this election. The ANC are currently polling below 30%. We're polling above 20%. So it's an open race. But clearly one party is not going to take it. So coalition government is going to be the future of the province of KwaZulu Natal.
South Africa's heated political race is intensifying as campaigning enters the last few days. The battle for power culminates on the 29th of May. However, there is increasing uncertainty about the outcome. A coalition government is looking like a possibility for the first time since the end of apartheid. Now, for more on the political developments in Africa, we are being joined live by Professor Andre Duvenhage, the political analyst and a research professor at the Northwest University in Potchefstroom. Welcome to Firstpost Africa, Professor. Now, the DA held their rescue rally in KwaZulu Natal. Right, this was on Saturday. Their message was that these elections are critical for the future of South Africa. In your view, just how critical are the upcoming elections to the successful future of South Africa?
Alison, I have no doubt that this is the most important election since the 1994 election, entering at that point in time the post-apartheid dispensation. And at the moment, there are major political, economic and social issues within the country. For example, a high unemployment rate, high levels of crime, high levels of instability, low levels of economic growth. And there's no doubt that the ruling ANC party is under severe pressure. Some of the surveys were indicating a support base even below 40%. My own assessment is that the ANC normally mobilize a lot of support closer to the election. So I believe that they will come close to a win. But I think the more likely scenario for the ANC is not to attain an absolute majority, and it's highly likely that we can see some form of a coalition government. Now, you did a lot of assessment on KZN. There are two provinces in this election that is extremely critical, not only for the ANC, but for the country as a whole, and that is KZN and the major industrial province of Gauteng. Now, at this point in time, it seems about the fact that in both these provinces, we are going to see some form of a coalition. Just a small note on the 2021 elections. There we have seen the ANC's national support on only 47.5% if you measure that nationally. But interestingly, there were about of the 250 plus local governments, there were more than 70 hung councils, indicating the reality of coalition politics.
Right. Now, Professor, as you touched on there has been a lot of talk about coalitions ahead of the upcoming elections, with people saying that it is likely the ANC will lose the majority for the first time since South African democracy. So you agree with this? And which parties then are likely to form coalitions?
Well, I think we are working with more than one scenario. I'm working with about three scenarios at this point. One is that the ANC can either win the election with a very small margin or just lose it with a very small margin. And then they can basically, with the support of smaller parties, attain an absolute majority on a national level. However, in KZN and in Gauteng, I think there need to be more substantive coalitions. Now, who are the potential partners of the ANC? You know, when we talk about ANC politics, I think the ANC would like to rescue KZN, who are their biggest province. So I'm not excluding the possibility that the IFP, currently part of the multi-party charter, may be going very close to the ANC. But I'm also not excluding the MK party or the EFF. However, the more unlikely scenario is the ANC working with the Democratic Alliance. I think, however, if we can end up in a situation where the ANC and the DA can literally create a government of national unity, that will probably be the best case for South Africa in the near and medium future.
Right. Now, the leader of the DA, John Steenhuisen, has called a possible coalition between the ANC, the EFF and the MK parties as doomsday for South Africa. What are your thoughts on this statement?
Well, to a certain extent, I can agree. But when it comes to democracy, we need to abide the will of the majority. And if that is the will of the majority, that is the way to go. That is the core principle of democracy and democratic elections. But I must tell you, I am currently very concerned about the left to center approach in South African politics. We have seen extremely low levels of economic growth. In fact, over the past decade or more, the average growth rate was around 1%. If we talk about the unemployment situation, one definition above 30%, the bigger definition above 40%. Instability in the country between 1994 and 2017, 500,000 people were killed in murders. That is more than the death total in some countries that are currently in a form of civil war, including what is going on between Russia and the Ukraine. So we need in South Africa drastic reform. We need to create an environment that is conducive for investment in the country, because the South African economy needs investment. We need stability. Currently, about 80% of our municipalities experience a form of dysfunctionality. Putting all of this together, I think there's a huge need for radical reform. And I think the Democratic Alliance can play a very important role in attempts to reform politics, the economy, and society. When it comes to the ANC, in combination with more radical groups like the MK group or the EFF, I am much more concerned. In that sense, I agree with John Steenhuisen.
Professor, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa, your valued insights and analysis there.
Thank you very much.
Now, from a rapidly declining economy to a political paralysis, Tunisia is facing a two-way crisis, with a wave of arrests targeting activists, journalists and opposition. Many in the country are now fearing the return of authoritarian rule. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets of Tunisia's capital, Tunis, demanding the release of imprisoned journalists, lawyers and opposition figures. The demonstrators also called for setting a date for the African country's presidential polls.
The National Salvation Front takes to the streets again to fight for fair election conditions. We consider this battle necessary, firstly, to set a date for the presidential elections, and secondly, to ensure the conditions for free, fair, and democratic elections, which we do not see as reality.
A string of arrests targeting those critical to President Kais Saied have left many angry. Now, on the 11th of May, Tunisia's police arrested a prominent lawyer, Sonia Dramani, who is known for her fierce criticism of the president. The authorities stormed the building of the Deanship of Lawyers to take her into custody. 2 journalists were also arrested on the same day.
The storming of the lawyer's house yesterday and the forcible taking of the lawyer Sonia Dramani represent a precedent unseen in all the authoritarian eras in Tunisia. This incident is a dangerous development that we believe reflects the crisis of the July 25th system, and it expresses the state of panic experienced by this system of living forces in the country.
The incident marked the administration's latest move in its efforts to crack down on dissent. Dramani's arrest came after she made sarcastic remarks about the country. Now, earlier in the week, she denounced Tunisia's living conditions during a local TV program. Criticizing the country, Dramani said that half of the youth wanted to flee Tunisia. Many viewers reportedly found her comments degrading. The basis for Dramani's arrest is thought to be a controversial law known as Decree 54. The law was signed by President Saied in September of 2022. Authorities say that the law was introduced to combat fake news, but it has received some mounting flack from critics who say it is used to crack down on dissent. According to reports, some 60 journalists, lawyers and opposition members have been held under the decree.
Today, people are being arrested for anything, absolutely anything. On top of all that, we are undermining the upcoming elections. Tunisia will be on the brink of crisis and collapse. Therefore, we advocate for holding the elections on the scheduled date, ensuring they are conducted within a framework of freedom and equal opportunity.
Tunisia's President Kais Saied came to power in 2019, but in 2021 he sacked the Prime Minister and suspended the parliament. Following the parliament's dissolution, Saied moved to rule by decree. In 2022, he issued a presidential decree granting himself the power to fire judges, and this the opposition described as a self-coup. Now, from diplomacy to territories and from trade to technology, for decades, China and the United States have been marked by several disputes vying for global dominance. Now, their newest playing field in recent years has been Africa, and the latest frontier, artificial intelligence. In the latest, the US and China will hold their first talks on artificial intelligence, with Washington set to raise concerns about Beijing's use of the technology. Both China and the US have stepped up efforts to collaborate with African countries on attracting AI investment and formulating policy. The United States has already invested in AI in Africa. Silicon Valley giant Google opened its first AI lab in Ghana. IBM also has research facilities in Kenya and South Africa. Last month, the American Chamber of Commerce held a business summit in Nairobi. Washington announced a partnership to enable U.S. companies to invest in AI and data centers in Kenya. While the U.S. has provided substantial aid to African countries, China's approach has been different. It has focused on infrastructure investments. In fact, China began its commercial engagements in Africa in the late 1990s. Since 2013, Beijing has been investing in Africa's internet infrastructure and connectivity through President Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. Now, China also declared its intention to collaborate with African countries on AI at the China-Africa Internet Summit last month. Some 20 African countries were a part of the summit in China's port city of Xiamen. Now, China also pushed for the establishment of Africa AI policy, as well as the promotion of AI technology, research and development in African institutions. A handful of African countries, including Rwanda, Egypt and Mauritius, have published national AI strategies. Others, including Nigeria, Kenya and South Africa, are developing similar strategies. But there are growing calls to adopt regulation of AI on the continent. One country on the continent that is rapidly pursuing AI is South Africa. South Africa has already established an artificial intelligence institute and is rolling out hubs at universities across the country. Both the US and China see South Africa as a gateway into Africa and the developing country's agenda. Now, African leaders will have a chance to adopt African Union's AI policy draft framework at next year's AU Heads of State Summit in February. Getting AI right would allow Africa to tap into its immense potential applications in new areas including health, education and agriculture. According to reports, AI could add $1.5 trillion to Africa's economy by the year 2030, if the continent can capture just 10% of the market. Now, China has been leading the AI race by a considerable margin. Its President Xi Jinping had set the goal of becoming the global AI leader by the year 2030. And with China's AI growth, there seemed little doubt over who would win the tech race. But the year 2023 changed the game around. The unprecedented growth of the US-based OpenAI's ChatGPT raised eyebrows in China. Beijing has still not been able to compete with it. Its own versions thereafter lag behind the American one in multiple ways. So, for AI, will Africa turn toward China or the US? This increased focus on artificial intelligence in Africa comes at a time when there is a simmering anti-West sentiment in several African nations as they tilt towards China and Russia. But will this shift in sentiment also apply to collaboration on the AI front? That remains to be seen. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid the coups and the crises, there are many positive stories from Africa that often get overlooked, but not on this show. Today, we are getting you a story from South Sudan. Weekly comedy shows have seamlessly woven themselves into the fabric of the cultural landscape. This is no small feat in a country grappling with the aftermath of political turmoil and civil strife. A courageous group of comedians have embarked on a mission to bring laughter back into the lives of South Sudanese people. Here's our report.
Nestled in the bustling heart of South Sudan's Juba city lies a hidden gem that ignites laughter and joy every Thursday evening. As the sun sets and the city buzzes with anticipation, thousands flock to a concert hall with munchies in hand, ready to immerse themselves in a unique form of entertainment which has become a beacon of hope in this war-torn region. What started as a small venture a decade ago has blossomed into Juba's most beloved entertainment fixture, weekly comedy shows. In a country plagued by political conflicts and civil unrest, the mission was simple yet profound: to make people laugh again against all odds. A group of courageous comedians took on this challenge. They were armed with the belief that humor could be a powerful tool for healing.
People were saying, please, I was so stressed. After going through your comedies, I am now relieved, I'm happy. They always tell us, please continue, guys. You're making us happy. At least you're making us forget our problems.
One of the comedians who started the comedy club says that at first their efforts were met with skepticism and resistance. People questioned why they should pay to laugh when there was so much hardship all around. Some people even hurled bottles at the comedians, dismissing their attempts as frivolous. Many said they wanted to dance and not laugh. But gradually, the public's appetite for comedy grew, and so did their understanding of its significance. Performers say the comedy scene in South Sudan has now evolved into a mature and respected art form. Earlier, one couldn't make a joke about tribes or government. A comedian could be killed if he hurt someone's sentiments. But now they're invited to weddings and government functions, and people understand the craft better. However, the comedians too navigate delicate topics with finesse. The topics the comedians tackle range from the 2013 to 2018 war that cost hundreds of thousands of lives to everyday quarrels between husbands and wives. Comedians can now push boundaries about many hot-button issues. One comedian joked about South Sudan's schools being broke in the presence of the country's education minister. They usually don't take up topics about killing and death, but they sometimes refer to it. What sets these comedians apart is their ability to make the audience feel seen and understood. They draw inspiration from the quirks of everyday life in Juba, from making fun of the dance styles of suburban girls to the idiosyncrasies of authoritarian families.
The way I would see comedy from South Sudan in the diaspora, it's very different than what we watch out there. I would say it's a lot of inside jokes. You have to be South Sudanese to really understand the joke. Sometimes I try to explain to some people who are not South Sudanese like what's so funny about it, and they kind of get it, but they don't get it fully because it's just there's so many different nuances, so many different things underneath that they don't understand.
No topic is too taboo. They navigate the complexities of South Sudan's political and social landscape with wit and sensitivity. As attendees leave the concert hall, their hearts feel lighter and their spirits lifted.
The performance was really so superb. It was so awesome. Even me, I'm one of the fans who really went celebrating, enjoying this day, and there were a lot of laughter in the theater. People were so excited, despite the fact that there are a lot of challenges outside. But when you enter Kilikiliana, you really feel so happy and you learn a lot.
One thing is clear, laughter truly is the best medicine. In a country where the echoes of war still linger, these weekly comedy shows offer a glimmer of hope, reminding people that even amidst the chaos, there is still joy to be found.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching and goodbye.